Everybody was Seaman Deuce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Thumpston was in that band.
Okay.
He was my right-hand man. He was an older seaman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he came in the Navy a little later, and his brother was also in that band.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a second class that they made. They sent me later on because all I had was seamen, and I needed a petty officer in the band. So they sent me Bonner, a trombone player by the name of Bonner, and I was just as soon not have Bonner because he wasn't a leader. Mm-hmm. He was okay, but he was a nice fella, but he wasn't a leader. Not what I wanted as a assistant leader of the band.
Yeah. Now your admiral over there, was he one prone to jump ship a lot?
That admiral, I wasn't on that ship a week after we left Yokosuka, Japan, and a Marine came down and got me. Says, the admiral wants to see you. I said, wow, what did I do now? I just got here, you know. So we're going up there, and I'm trying to think of his name as I'm speaking, and it may come to me.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be the commandant of the Navy Academy. But anyway, I get up to his stateroom, and he wanted to know if I was familiar with songs, ditties that midshipmen sung at the academy. I said, no, I wasn't. He said, well, there was one particular one that I like, and I'd like for you to make an arrangement of it and have the band play it when we hit Hong Kong. We're going to be in Hong Kong in 2 weeks. I said, well, Admiral, I don't know the song. I said, perhaps if you could whistle it or hum it, I'll see if I could get it in my head and write it down. So he did. And it took me about an hour there with him, and I had it down. And I took it down to Thumpston. I said, okay, Thumpy, here's what I think is the melody of this song. And he said, I need an arrangement in 2 weeks when we hit Hong Kong. Okay, Chief. No, I wasn't Chief. Okay, Dan, I'll get it for you. So he did it. Thumpy made the arrangement of it. And so when we hit Hong Kong, we struck up the band, and I played that thing, and I tell you, the 7th Fleet Band didn't want for anything all the time we were on that ship.
Yeah, you got to keep the old man happy.
But,
what were you guys riding then?
That was the St. Paul.
Okay.
The USS St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But every 6 months, the ship changed. It was the St. Paul, the Rochester, and the Helena.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the 3 ships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was over there for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my next duty station...
And who relieved you there?
Muffley.
Okay.
First class Muffley.
Now the years are filling in. Yeah.
And that was in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
Muffley relieved me.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of comical now that you ask who relieved me. Every time I got relieved of bands that I had, the person made officer. Starting with Muffley.
Mm-hmm.
He became, the leader of the Navy Band, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And then my next duty station was Boston. One thing happened in Boston when I was the bandmaster that's kind of comical in a way. It gets cold up there in the wintertime when the band doesn't have to play colors in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But the band was supplying buglers. So when I took over the band, I had just come out of the, knew it being a chief and all of that, but still remembered what I learned back in the music school, that musicians are not supposed to be assigned to anything but musical duties. So I went up to see the captain of the bass because he wanted those buglers from the band. And I explained to him that we're not to do that, that there's another rate that make them play bugles.
Yeah, quartermasters.
Quartermasters.
Yeah.
I said, quartermasters are buglers. He said, we don't have any quartermasters. You're going to use your trumpet players as buglers. I said, Captain, listen, if I do that, Captain McDonald is probably going to take my rate away from me because it's against regulations for us to do that. He said, Richardson, if you don't put them buglers up, I can take your rate away too. I said, would you mind if I would call Captain Mack from your telephone and you could hear what he had to say about this, be my guest. So I, in the captain's office of the Boston Naval Base shipyard, I called Captain Mack. And I get Captain Mack on the phone, and I told him where I was, told him what the issue was, and his next word was, Richardson, if that captain tells you to take that band out there and dig a ditch, you better start digging the ditch. Okay. All right, Captain, where do you want those buglers? So that was a good time. I had a good time up there. So the captain and I got along good.
Now, who was your LPO in that band? You know?
Swede Nielsen, I believe.
Swede Nielsen?
I think Swede Nielsen. Oh, and another good story from that Boston band, Duke Garrett.
Yep.
Formerly of Lionel Hampton and
right.
all that big band stuff.
That's
He comes.
Right.
Laid back cat. And I gave him a proficiency of 3.9 on his trumpet, and he had a fit. Comes into my office and said, Chief, I don't like this Mark 3.9. He said, I'm used to getting 4 O's. I said, 4 O's? I said, nobody's perfect.
And where did he come from when he came to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, he came from Hawaii, and who's that Dixieland trumpet player?
Yeah, Norris, John Norris.
No, John Norris. He said, John Norris gave me 4 O's. I said, well, Duke, I'm sorry. I said, that's the way I see it, a 3.9. I said, perhaps later on you can get a 4.0, but I don't give out 4.0s very frequently. And so the next day, I think it was, we had a big band rehearsal, and I'm getting ready for high school concerts, and I'm doing this concert band thing that I could hear in my head. A trumpet solo with a blues background would really go good. And I had 11 trumpet players in the band, and Duke's sitting last chair because he had just gotten there. So Ray Credit was the solo trumpet player. And I asked him if he could live there, and he said no. Went down the whole group of trumpet players, and they says no, they couldn't do it. Duke says, I said, how about you, Duke? He said, I'll try. I mean, I never heard such a trumpet player as Duke Garrett. I said, you got your 4.0, Duke, and you're going to run the dance band, too. And I think we had one of the best dance bands in the Navy, thanks to Duke Garrett.
Yeah.
And another member of that band was Noonie Wilson. Noonie Wilson was playing baritone sax, and Duke made a star of him, sort of in a comic way.
It would have to be.
To come out of his shell.
Right.
And who else was in that band? A future captain was often in charge of the music school.
Joe Phillips?
Joe Phillips.
Okay.
Joe Phillips was
Yeah.
a third class
Yeah.
in the Boston
Yeah.
band when I was there.
Yeah. Good trombone player.
Great trombone player. Yeah, he played real good.
This might show up on some other tape, but I was at Joe's frocking down at the school.
Mm-hmm.
That was where he made captain, because I was there at his frocking.
Ah.
And he told me an interesting story out there at the reception. He says, he's from Kannapolis, North Carolina. And he says, you know, I've never told you this before. He says, but when I came up to the school to take my audition, it was in June of '57. Now, I made chief in September '57. He says, I came up there to take this audition, and they sat me down there in the auditorium to wait for my turn up in the recording booth to take my audition. And he says, you're up on stage with this band, and I see all those white uniforms. And he says, I sat there and I clasped my hands, and he said, I've got to pass this audition. I got to get some of this. And lo and behold, he went on to become captain, you know. Just a little aside. I mean, we have so many connections in this program that it's not even funny, you know.
Do you think we'll ever see another captain musician?
We got another captain musician.
We do?
Ralph Gambone.
Oh, I didn't know he made captain.
Ralph is the head of the Navy band now.
Oh, Oh,
Yes.
well, I be.
Yes. Yes. Number 2.
Well, that's terrific.
Yeah. So Boston happened, and
An interesting story in Boston, too, was, I always try to look out for my men, all right? So we had to go down to Rhode Island, the air station down there, to play for the president. Now, who was the president? I think it was Nixon. I think it was Nixon. This was probably 1959, 58 or 59 when this took place. So I got permission from the flag lieutenant from Com 1 to go down there in civilian clothes so that when we played the ceremony, we could change down there and it'd be spotless.
be fresh.
See, be fresh, squared away. He said, sure, no problem. So we was in a Navy bus, and we went down there, and somehow or another we were a little late for the rehearsal. They're going to rehearse first. So when we pulled up, they had the Marine Guard out rehearsing. The captain of the base was out there. The band pulls off of that bus in these outlandish civilian clothes, including me. And the executive base comes over, he says, how come you're not in uniforms? I said, well, sir, we got permission to wear these civilian clothes so we wouldn't mess up our uniforms. If you just show us a place to change, we can change, and we don't have time to change. He says, we have to have this rehearsal right now. I said, okay, guys, fall out. And he took pictures of the band in these civilian clothes practicing for when the president came. So it was about a half hour between the practice and when the plane arrived. So of course we were squared away. I mean, we looked sharp and everything went off beautiful. The exec and the captain, everybody, well done, Chief Richardson, that band was marvelous, blah, blah, blah. About a week later, the flag lieutenant calls me up, come over to the office, I want to see you. So I go over there and he breaks out these pictures with the letter that this captain, the commander wrote. Your band was outstanding, blah, 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 boom, 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 but it was unfortunate they showed up on my base in civilian clothes. And so right in front of me, the flag lieutenant took it like this. He said, don't worry about it, Chief, and threw it in the can because he had given me the permission to wear the civilian clothes.
Right, right.
So you never know what happened.
Now that was a gutsy flag lieutenant. Because,
he was a gutsy
because
guy.
some, maybe a lot, or just not, weren't.
I know. I know. So from now, who relieved me in Boston? Tom Adcock.
Okay.
Another future officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now there was 7th Fleet, who relieved me, Muffley. Here is Boston, who relieves me, Adcock. So I went to the School of Music on the staff. And I was head of the band training department, not the fleet music department. Mm-hmm. I left there as assistant head of band training with Huddleston. Now, during our tour of duty at the music school, Macmillan calls me in and says he wants me to take a Unitas band after the one, Ralph was the first one down there, and Macmillan says, you're going to take the next band down there. And I was having marital problems at the time, and I begged off of it. I says, Commander Mack, or Lieutenant Mack, I says, please, I can't leave right now. I said, I'm trying to put my marriage back together. I don't really want to go. And he says, Richardson, if you find somebody who is acceptable to me, you won't have to go. You're off the hook. So I went around the school and I saw for Joni. I said, hey Frank, you want to take the band down to South America? Yeah, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You know, he's a nervous guy anyway. I said, well Frank, I was offered the job. And I have to take it unless I can find somebody who would volunteer to take it and go with it. Shoo, man, he beelined it into Macmillan's office. And so I was off the hook, and the rest is history. And I'm glad for Joni got it, because I never could have done a good a job as he's done.
Well, he did. You would have done a fine job too, but he did do
He did a fabulous job.
A good job down there, and went back.
He
He showed me letters. They still write him.
He was a consummate showman. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, just like Sid Zarandi.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He applauded Sid a lot.
Yeah.
He really did. Yeah, that's interesting.
So that was a. But it didn't save my marriage in the long run anyway. I got divorced, and then I went to the Sixth Fleet, and that was an interesting gig too. But who relieved me in the Sixth Fleet? Andy Slager.
Andy Schlager.